Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host Owen James, a channel that brings you all the latest news going on at the greatest team in the world. Well, look, I've got to thinking a little bit, about what we could do about moving this squad forward, about moving this team forward. Um, I've got thinking about players in particular positions, how we can use them, and what we could possibly do in terms of purchasing players. There's not been reports, obviously, loads of reports, and I know some people don't like them. Apparently I'm full of it, according to one commenter last night. My comment to him is, I don't really care what you think. Also, at the end of the day, we've been linked with other players as well. Lennon Miller. We'll have a little look at Lennon Miller tonight and why he could be a good purchase for Rangers. I'm also going to look at one of the young players and why we might already have a solution to our six issue in the building already. Just a reminder, tonight is a big game for Dynamo Kiev, but also a big game for Rangers, as we will find out who our opponents are going to be. Dynamo Kiev travel to the Partizan Stadium to take on Partizan Belgrade with a 6-2 aggregate lead after the first leg. Kiev were imperious in that first leg. They now obviously travel to Serbia to take on Partizan. I think the likelihood of them not going through is very slim indeed. But you know what? This is football. Anything could happen. Kiev scored 6 in the last round, for example. However, Partizan do need to score 5 unanswered goals to go through. So I think the likelihood of that is very slim indeed. But we will, around about sort of 9:30, 10 o'clock tomorrow night, know who our opponents are going to be in that third qualifying round game next week. My God, it's next week already. Of course, the Euro squad has to be submitted by Thursday. So, John Bennett, I know you're watching. Philippe Clement, I know you're watching. I know you're massive fans of the channel. Get your fingers out. Get some players in before Thursday, please. Right, let's have a little think. Let's have a little look at Lennon Miller. Lennon Miller is someone that a lot of fans have talked positively about. There's been reports about him being linked to Rangers. I don't know if those reports are true. They may be people talking out the tops of their heads. I don't know. I like talking about these things. If you don't like this, you know what to do. Turn off. It's a free country for now. We have freedom of speech in this country for now. So you know what? I'll talk about what I want. So Lennon Miller, top player, really, really good player. And I think, at times we perhaps forget that this lad's only 17 years old. His experience, his talent, his skill far belies his age. You look at the lad on the field and you think that that's an older player, certainly someone in his early 20s, certainly not someone 17, nearly 18 years old. Lennon Miller he's from Wishaw, Pishy Wishy, whenever Laura knows him. Just over 6 foot. He's a centre midfielder. He is in contract with Motherwell till 2026. His birthday is not until 25th of August. He turns 18 on the 25th of August. His last contract extension was 2023. So, he's under contract until 2026. So if you're going to get him away from Motherwell, it's going to cost some money. Market value, transfer market estimated around €1.5 million, which is about £1 million. I personally think that is undervaluing Lennon Miller. I think, if you wanted to secure Lennon Miller for your club, you'd have to pay somewhere in the region of £2.5-3 million to Motherwell to get him. I rate him that highly. I do rate this lad very highly. Now, he's primarily a central midfield player, but can also play attacking midfield and defensive midfield. Now, given that Rangers do need an attacking midfield player and perhaps another centre midfield player to some degree as well, Miller could be the player that kind of comes in and fits that sort of bracket, that ability. If you look at what Miller's like as a player, he's got the skill to go past the player. He's got some pretty top moves that we saw last season, some spin moves, step over, his ability to go past the player. He's got an eye for a shot, an eye for a goal. He's not afraid to take a shot. Certainly something that, that Tom Lawrence has held up has been an example. But Miller has perhaps got that in his locker, and then he's got something that Tom Lawrence hasn't got, which is a bit more speed, a bit more endurance, a bit more ability to perhaps go for a bit longer than Lawrence can and do it and get around the field a little bit more than Tom Lawrence can. Not obviously as injury prone as Tom. So, that's certainly going in his favour. Like I said, I like Lennon Miller. I think, he's a player that could realistically have I don't think that's actually realistic. I think will have a big future in the Scottish game. I think he'll be an international. I think he'll be a player that goes on to be a great success for whichever club he plays for. I don't think that the next move he makes will be his final move. I think this lad's got all the skill in the world and the talent in the world to go and even play, down south in the Premier League. I think he is that good. One of the things that I kind of thought of is, if Rangers were to revert to a more traditional three-man midfield rather than a 4-2-3-1, given the fact that none of these players is what you would call a traditional 10, I mean, this midfield for me would, I think, dominate this league and could compete in Europe as well. I know there's a lot of young lads in that, but youth should be no barrier to success. You look at some of the Manchester United teams that were successful with the likes of, Beckham and Scholes and Giggs, young players that were very successful. You look at players that have come through that have been very successful, young, talented players. Phil Foden at Manchester City. Yes, he was shit in the Euros, but overall, he's been very good for Manchester City. So, Saka for Arsenal, Martin Odegaard for Arsenal, again, young players who've come in and impressed and done really, really well. So, I mean, this midfield for me would have everything. If this was a possibility that we could get our hands on Lennon Miller, I think this is something that could overcome that issue of not having a real out-and-out 10 at the club and perhaps not having to spend huge amounts of money to actually secure an effective midfield that would not only have some bite and fight, but would also have a creative element to it as well that could, could create chances for the forwards, could get the front three involved, could, really link defence and attack. And I think as well could really, really dominate Celtic. Diamande, what I think of Diamande. He's a class act. He really is. And I've spoken enough about what he can do as a player. I think Connor Barron, is your scrappy, your fighter, the guy who's going to sit and going to kick and battle and fight and win the ball back. He doesn't stop running. He doesn't stop getting stuck in. And if he loses a challenge, he's straight back up and back into it again to try and get the ball back. And then Lennon Miller would provide that again, that little bit extra class, the speed to get forward, to go past the man. I think this would just give us so much flexibility and attacking talent from the middle and bite as well. Miller's not afraid to get stuck in. So for me, I think, that yes, there has been reports, and I'm not saying these reports are true. I'm not saying these reports are definitely happening. But, if Lennon Miller is someone who is on Rangers' radar, I really hope that he is a player that we are looking at because, we've already proved that we're not afraid to sign now young Scottish talent. We went and got Connor Barron, who's a top player, and it's proving himself to be that top player. I genuinely think that Connor Barron is a Rangers captain of the future. So Lennon Miller, for me, is certainly someone we should be taking a good long look at. Now, one of the things that we don't do well at Rangers, well, one of the many things, but it don't do well, is promote youth. We don't use our young players enough. Now, Phil Clement came to the club, and he came to the club with that whole premise that, he's about promoting youth. He's about using young players. He used McCausland well last year. He introduced McKinnon. He introduced Fraser. You've got to hope that is something he's going to continue this season. Now, before anyone shouts me down, I'm not saying start these kids. I'm saying give them a role to play. Let them play 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. And no, I'm not saying it is if we're 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 up. Whatever this, put them on. Let them prove themselves. Because I'll tell you one thing about these kids. They're going to go out there and they're going to fight to keep that jersey. They're going to fight to show that they're worthy of a first-team place. And they're going to show just as much heart, if not more, than some of those experienced first-team regulars. Now, a player for me, and this is a player that I banged on about an awful lot. And, last season I supported Robbie Fraser into the first team and was laughed at by some people. Hey, guess it was right on that one. Bayy Rice. Look, Bailey. People have talked about there possibly been an issue between Bailey and the manager. I don't think there's any issue between Bailey and the manager. I think Bailey has been out injured. He's missed a few games. He certainly has had his problems. Of course, he has. But now he's fit and back. I think he's a player that we need to get up to speed quick and get into this first team. If you look at Bailey as a player, he came through the Motherwell youth system before he moved to Rangers and was actually considered a better prospect and a better player than Lennon Miller. He's a defensive midfielder. That's his primary position, which is a 6, which is what we need. And Bailey's had an opportunity to play under Michael Beale. I mean, it's one of the things that Michael Beale did do right. He came on against Livy. He did well against Livy, from what I remember in that game. And he can play centre midfielder. He can also play centre back, although he's a little on the small side to be a centre back. But the primary position for Bailey is as a defensive midfield player. Bailey is 17, just like Lennon Miller. And Lennon Miller played a full season for Motherwell last year. And I know Motherwell are in a very different position to Rangers. They don't have the squad depth. They don't have the money that we do. So they've got to use their young players. But guys, I don't think we've got the squad depth. And I don't think we've got the money either this season. This one in, one out. The fact that if you look at our squad depth, I think it is very weak. We did the podcast on it yesterday morning. So, Bailey for me has to be given an opportunity. I don't think he'll let us down. This is a lad that has impressed for Scotland's under 18s, under 21s. He's a player that at one point Real Madrid even looked at, from what I remember from a report I read a while ago. Now he's under contract as well till 2026. So this is a player that we've got for the next 3 years. So again, this is a player who, if he's a success, if he goes on to do well for the club, could be certainly someone we could flip for some serious cash in the future. Bailey's experience, yes, at this moment in time is limited. 14 appearances in the Lowland League, 6 in the UEFA Youth League, 4 in the Challenge Cup, 3 Premiership appearances, and that's pretty much it. So 27 appearances in total, just over 1,000 minutes of football, 2 goals, 1 assist, 1 yellow red and 1 red card. So he's got a bit of bite, a bit of dog about him, a bit of battle about him. But, I genuinely think that this is a guy that could be an option from the bench, could be someone who could come in and help to shore games up. Certainly someone we need to be looking at, and we need to be promoting these young players. And I think one of the things that we've got to realise as a club at this point in time, until the trading model gets going, if it ever does get going, is we do need to promote from the youth players. And you're never going to know if these young players are good enough until you've actually given them the opportunity to show that they're good enough. Now, I think a lot of people forget, for me, just how bad some of the Scottish Premier League teams are. Hibs, Hearts and Aberdeen, Kilmarnock. I include all of them in this list of how bad they are. Rangers should be walking all over them. That's not arrogance. That's just a fact. I mean, look, go back to what Graham Souness said. Rangers should be going into games with teams. I'm not talking about Celtic here. That is an evenly fought contest. But I'm talking about Aberdeen. I'm talking about Hibs, Hearts, St Johnstone, Killie, Ross County, Dundee United. And it shouldn't be is it going to be tricky this weekend? Are we going to get a result? It should be, how many are we going to win by? That's not arrogance. That's just how it should be. That's what Graham Souness said. And I respect Big Graham. So look, at the end of the day, we should be giving these young lads the chance to prove themselves, to see if they're good enough. And I think, if they come and they're not good enough and they can't do it against the likes of Killie and Dundee United, then we move them on. We get some money for them, obviously not as much as we would like, but you've got to generate some income. You don't just wait till 2026 and go, oh, well, Bayy Rice, we never really gave him a chance and now he's leaving for free. I mean, that's really bad business. That's really bad business model that doesn't generate you any cash. And we need to be generating cash. So for me, I really want to see Bayy Rice being given a chance next season to impress, a chance to prove himself. Get him on for the last 20 minutes here, the last half an hour there. There's a lot of people out there that rate this lad very, very highly. It's not just me. He's not my surrogate son that I'm trying to promote up the ranks. He is a player that I do want to see. Right, guys, well, we are heading, it's Wednesday today. We are heading very quickly now towards the Thursday deadline for the submission of the Champions League squads. I really hope today that there are some announcements from the club. Obviously, with Goldson departing yesterday, that does obviously free up around £2 million in salary, another 1.7 million in transfer fee. So around about £3.5 million for fees and wages. We do need to be starting to invest. And I hope that the club are looking at centre-backs, centre-forwards, 10s, 6s, something before, Thursday. I'm worried. I am worried about the Champions League. I think a lot does depend, initially, because we are not generating the income from player sales, that we need to be generating the income elsewhere. And that income, I think, needs to come from Champions League revenue. So, looking at it like that, the Champions League revenue needs to come through to the club. And if we can't qualify this year again, we're going to take a big hit, and they're already in the Champions League. So we'll get the Champions League money again and we'll move further financially ahead of us. And I know people say, well, they're not buying anyone. I don't really care, but they've still got more money than us. That's the issue. They're financially a lot better off than we are. And the Champions League, whether you think we're going to, and as I've said a number of times, it's not about competing for me in Europe at the moment. It's about getting into Europe and getting the money. Competition and competing in Europe will come 2-3 years down the line once we've had chance to build the squad back up, to put right the wrongs of the past. It's about getting the money this year. And that's why Champions League group stage, especially with the 8 games in the group stage this year, the increased revenue in the Champions League this year is so important. I think that money can really supplement this squad and supplement the purchases this squad that we can make to improve this squad going forward. That's why, for me, I think it's absolutely desperate that today and before the deadline on Thursday, we get players in and we get them registered in ready to be in that Champions League squad. Because I'll be honest with you, this squad we've got now will not get past Dynamo Kiev in my opinion, sorry. I think defensively we're too weak. I think we would make too many mistakes, and I don't think we've got the cutting edge up front. If you rely on Cyril Dessers to score you goals in Europe, which he only scored 1 last season, that's right, guys. Before anyone comes back at me with that, he scored 22 goals last season, yeah, but only 1 was in Europe. He showed he was very, very, very ineffective in Europe, and we need a striker that's going to score goals in Europe and take us to that next level. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Obviously, please subscribe to the channel. Help us to keep on growing. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, on the way out, please smash that like and always remember, we are the people.